Hello, I am back this week with another video on some books in my collection, books that inspire art and creativity and different art styles of art. And this week I'm actually going back to silk painting. Now, one of my first videos I did was on making silk paper. Today I'm going to share with you all of my silk painting books that I currently have in my library. And I'm going to start with this one here, which is called New Crafts Silk Painting by Susie Stocco. And this was published quite a long time ago. Let's take a look who the publisher is. And it is, I believe, from England, Lorenz Books. And I think Susie is a British painter. And she takes silk and probably does a little more crafting with it. Some of the examples and projects in here, which you can follow along, we'll be using this painted silk for more practical things like a covered frame, a lampshade, pillows. Here's some examples right here. A little more practical things. She's got a little bit of clothing in here as well. Here is a beautiful example of quilting with silk. Hopefully you can all see that. I'm going to scoot this over just a bit. And then the nice thing that I like about her book too is she has a section on just basic techniques with silk. So she's pretty thorough on sharing how to stretch the silk, what you're going to stretch it on, the different pins that you're going to use to secure the silk. She has a whole section on batiking as well and shows all the different ways that batik can end up looking depending on what you are using to create the designs with the wax. I personally haven't batiked on silk, but I know artists who have, and they really love doing that technique. She even has a section here on marbling. I have never tried marbling with silk, but it looks like it would be a lot of fun. Here's something where this is already a fan that has been made. It's a silk fan, and she has used a gutta serti technique and then followed back through with the silk dye and made a beautiful hand-painted fan. That could even be put in a frame and hung. So some really good ideas. This is an older book. Let me tell you what year this was actually published. I did find this on the Thrift Books website. I always find all these great books on Thrift Books. Let's see, this is published in 1999. So yeah, this is a little ways back. Oh, look at these colors on this page. That's the one thing I love about silk painting is the colors are phenomenal. You just get beautiful, deep, rich, jewel tone colors. I want to find another example here that I want to share with you. She even has some advice on how to sew an evening bag. And I used to do little evening bags back when I was painting on silk and making a lot of different products out of silk, from hair scrunchies to bags, pillows, men's ties, in addition to the scarves, silk shawls, and wall hangings, which I didn't really sew on the sewing machine, but I used to hand stitch a sleeve with using silk thread, and then they would go on a dowel or even a curtain rod or even highly polished copper, which I thought always looked really neat with the type of paintings I was doing at that time. So again, this book, Susie Stocco, New Crafts, Silk Painting, lots of great craft ideas and projects in there with full instructions on materials, equipment, and all the techniques that you will need. 300 photographs as well in there. Okay, the next two books are both about shibori dyeing. Now shibori, I like to say shibori is the Japanese version of tie-dye, but shibori has been around for a very, very long time, and American artists were introduced to it probably, I'm sure it was before the 1960s, but a lot of us are very aware, of course, of tie-dyed shirts and anything really that's been tie-dyed. So both of these books, this first one here is by Karen Brito, and this one was published by Watson Guptill Publishers, and the year, we can find it here, 2002, so this is a 24-year-old book now. But one of the things I do love about this particular shibori book is she does an awful lot of pole wrapping and this is the effect of pole wrapping and also with the pleating. And if you do not wash the silk scarf after doing a pole wrapping and dyeing technique, you end up with these incredible accordion folds, and they will stay in place as long as you do not hand wash it. You could dry clean it. Now, I think I have a Karen Brito that I bought many, many years ago at a beautiful fine craft store, and I only wear it on special occasions, and it is still beautifully pleated today as the day that I bought it and brought it home. I have a special little silk scarf holder in my closet that I display them on. Here's an incredible example of that technique, but sewn into a jacket. So shibori dyeing is not just wrapping silk around a pole and then scrunching it and using a cord and then dyeing it. There's many other different techniques in shibori dyeing, and this book, I think she doesn't go into as many of those techniques, but you can fold and accordion fold it, you can fold it and bind it, you can stitch it. The next book I'm going to show you has a little bit more of that. But the nice thing is she will show, this is actually, I have to show you this. This is an example of shibori dyeing by Cane and Sells. I saw their work in person at the Cherry Creek Arts Festival many, many years ago. And it's very, very high end, very fashion. They actually iron and get it flat, and then they did these really beautiful combinations of jackets where it was in panels, and it was just so unbelievably beautiful. Let's see here. This is hand stitching right here. That would be an example of hand stitching the silk and then dyeing it. The color, the reason why there's the lighter colors, that is where the dye can't reach, and that's because of the stitching and how you put it in. Let's see, there's probably something else in here. Okay, here we go. This is another example of stitching and then dyeing, and then what it looks like after you take the stitches out. All right, so I am going to move on to this other shibori book, and again, that's Shibori, Creating Color and Texture on Silk by Karen Brito. Okay, this one here is called Shibori, The Art of Fabric Tying, Folding, Pleating, and Dyeing by Elfriede Müller. She's a German artist, and this is published by Search Press, and the year this one was published, let's take a look here, probably at the back. Some of them put them at the back. Published actually in Great Britain in 1999 by Search Press. Now I love what she's done in this book because she's showing all different types of silk. So everything from organza to velvet to silk crepe to devore, silk chiffon. And you wouldn't think that, you know, some of these different weaves of silk would tie-dye or shibori dye very well, but there are some incredible examples in here, and they all look so beautiful. I do love how she has all the different types of dyeing with very clear photographs and very well written instructions. Again, that's the pole wrapping technique. And then she has all the materials that you'll need. Then has one called Twisting, and then how you're going to steam set that. Most of the dyes that silk painters use are steam set dyes. That means it has to have a combination of heat as well as the moisture to chemically bond those dyes to the silk itself. I have tried a couple times with Dynaflow. Now that's a heat set dye, and you would have to just unroll it, and then you have to use an iron to heat set it and fix those dyes. So let's find another good example. This one here, this is velvet. Hopefully you can see the pictures real well. All right, we're gonna find another technique in here because she had, there's the pole, also known as arashi dyeing. And you can look up shibori on the internet. There's a lot of wonderful Japanese artists as well as American artists that are doing all kinds of great dyeing in that shibori arashi technique. This is an example of a gorgeous wall hanging done with that type of dyeing. All right. And then I like that she shows some of these other techniques of how to fold. And then getting thread and wrapping and securing. And then everywhere that you drop dye in, if you have something that's binding that silk, that will stay white. So the dye won't reach that. And then when you unfold it, it's kind of like opening a Christmas present because it's just an unbelievable surprise. Here's a good example of something that just got unwrapped, and you can see that look. So shibori, it's a whole nother thing within the silk painting community. It's just beautiful, and it's a lot of fun to do and very freeing. And also the big surprise moment when you go to unwrap after you dye it, steam it, and then you're ready to see what it looks like. All right, this is one book that I have, and I don't think I've ever seen another book on this type of technique, but it is a lot of fun, and I used to do this a long time ago, and I found the book and I picked it back up again, and this one is also, let me see, I think it might be Shelley Stokes. Okay, Shelley Stokes is the author of Paint Sticks on Fabric, and you ask yourself, well, what are paint sticks on fabric? Well, there are paint sticks called Shiva oil sticks, and you can find those on the Dharma Trading Company website. You can find them on Dick Blick and Jerry's Artorama as well. But these are specifically made to work with fabrics, and you can put them on canvas too, but these are specifically made to work with fabrics. And here is a beautiful example of all the lovely colors. There's a lot of metallics and pearls in this particular line of paint sticks, and you can just draw on to the fabric, the silk. I used to do these on raw silk. I like the texture and the grab and the hold that raw silk had for using the paint sticks. So there's a whole section on how to get ready, washing, ironing, and getting your fabric ready, preparing the paint sticks, because you do have to peel off with like a little sharp knife all of the edging that dries around them to expose the soft part in the center. And then you use all kinds of interesting textures. You put the fabric on top. There's some wonderful rubbing plates that are also sold on Dharma Trading Company that go perfect with these Shiva oil sticks. And you can rub right on to the fabric, and the patterns that are underneath will show up. And so let's find a good example of how that shows up. And then, you know, she's using stencils in this book and freezer paper, and she's doing other things, making applique, how to clean it up, how to iron it. Now you can iron this once it's dry and set the dyes. Okay, this is a good example of what it looks like. So if you're looking for something different, I think you can probably use untreated canvas, and you could put those over the rubbing plates and use the Shiva oil sticks over that. But if you're looking to do something creative, and maybe it's going to be an article of clothing or a scarf, this is just another little thing you have in your supplies that would give you some really interesting things to do with silk scarves or silk, raw silk. I love raw silk. It's got a great look to it. All right, the last grouping of books are all by these two authors that put 3 books together on creative silk painting. And they started with this first one. This one is called The Complete Book of Silk Painting. These authors are Diane Tuckman and Jan Janis. And this one is the oldest of the 3. It was the first one published, and this one came out in 1992. And these are published by Northlight Books. So many good books with Northlight Books. But this is like the beginner's book. So this one is going to take you through everything you're going to need to know about painting on silk, from all the materials, all the supplies, how to set up your work area, how are you going to stretch your silk, how are you going to work on it, how to, make it easy so that you can move everything around in your studio. And then they have lots and lots of photographs in here of beautiful examples, whether it is artwork that you would hang or art that you would wear on your body. And in this book, I think a lot of the pictures are both of their works, but then I've got these other two books where they do feature many other artists. I like that they go through a comprehensive section of how different brushes will give you different effects, how to dilute your silk dyes, how to use different ways to apply it, all the different types of dyes and what their particular qualities are that you would get a great effect out of, and different resists that you would work with. So it's all very good knowledge to have, and you want to have good instructions. You know, it's not like you're going to go out every day and just find a silk painting class. If you're kind of on your own and you're living in an area that you don't have a lot of access to learning, not only is the internet great now, but back in the day before the internet, we all had to have books, and we all had to get really good at reading them and trying to understand. And then hopefully you find a group that you can join and get a little more education from your fellow silk painters. So many wonderful examples in this book. I'd show you every single page, but let me find one with a lot of good pictures. All right, two very interesting examples here of just what the silk will do. There's just nothing actually more freeing than putting that loaded sumi brush right onto the silk and just pushing it down and watching that dye just go whoosh. It's really one of the funnest things. Oh, here's a great example of two wonderful silk paintings. Okay, so this one is the one that you would start with first. This one, Creative Silk Painting, is the one that you would move on to once you kind of mastered the basics. And this one would take you into even more difficult techniques. This one, it's kind of interesting. What this one focuses on is what they call the new instant set dyes. Now, these came out, I think this book was 1994, but let's double check it. Again, it's Northlight Books. Okay, this one's 1995. So this new instant set dye, well, I tried to look back at it and they never actually gave an actual product name. It just said that it came from Switzerland. So I ended up Googling what's an instant set dye these days, basically, and I found color hue dyes made by gsdye.com, so gsdye.com. You can look up that website. These dyes do not need to be heat set or steam set. They will instantly bond with the silk immediately, and then you don't have to worry about that. So this was the one, if you want to work with that type of dye and you don't want to deal with a steamer or with having to iron, there is, believe it or not, a dye still around that you can do that. I love this one because there's a lot of clothing in here, and there's a lot of different artists that they feature in this book. A lot of artists that back in 1995 were very, very well known and were in all of the beautiful high-end art to wear stores and art to wear shops and fine craft galleries that would also carry fiber art. And I knew who a lot of these ladies were because I was also in a handful of those stores myself, and just amazing to see what people are doing with silk. So this is Pegati Christensen from Arizona, and she did amazing, amazing work back in the day. So this one's Creative Silk Painting, dozens of inspiring projects and techniques with instruction on easy to use new dyes. And by new dyes, at that particular moment in time, it was dyes that did not need heat setting or steam setting. They were bond instantly with the silk. And then this book that came out, this was their third book. This book came out in 1997. So this was, I think, their final book that they published. And this one here is The Best of Silk Painting. This one here, they very specifically featured dozens of different silk painters and what made them the best of the best in silk painting. And it's fun to look through this and just be inspired by all the creativity and all the different styles. Because after all, those of us that are artists, you know, you have your own way of painting, the way your brain works and the way you lay down paint or anything that you're working with is going to be very specific to you and what inspires you and where you're coming from with your intentions. So this one's a lot of fun to look at, and it really is inspiring because, you know, if you're just in a rut and you're like, what on earth do I do in my studio now? Well, sometimes having a book and just looking through what other people have done, you see a color palette that you didn't think of before, you see maybe some different patterning or just something, and you think, wow, okay, that's giving me some good ideas just to find my own direction and where I want to go. And that's the reason why I think a lot of us do have books. It's so that we can continue to grow and continue to learn in our artistic journeys that we are on. And that is today's video, all about painting on silk. And I hope that you will find these books very interesting. And if you're like me and you like to just kind of explore different art mediums, this might be something that you'll want to try. Again, my best source if you want to get into silk painting would be dharmatradingcompany.com. And then most of these I found on thriftbooks.com, but you can also look for these on Amazon. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't look to see if there were like brand new silk painting books, but I'm not sure there's a whole heck of a lot, because when I did look for some on thrift books, it's all these older books that popped up, and I remember them very clearly because back in the day I had an even bigger collection of silk painting books, and I was glad to see that you could still get some copies of these. So again, I'm Tracy. This is Art Books for Creativity. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in a week with another video on more art books. Have a great week.